She won the Nobel Peace Prize.
She's exposed corruption and widespread killings as part of President Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs.
And Amal Clooney called her a hero with a pen.
She stands taller than so many of us in her courage and personal sacrifice to the cause of telling the truth.
Journalist Maria Ressa has spent decades speaking truth to power and has risked her life for press freedom.
The award-winning journalist was arrested minutes after landing at Manila and taken into custody.
For some time now, she's been sounding the alarm about the dangers of social media.
It hacked our biology to change the way we feel about the world, which changes the way we act, which changes the way we vote.
Now, Compass has come to Manila to learn why and how big tech is threatening social cohesion and our democracies.
Democracy is a great system, but it only works if we can agree on a shared set of facts.
Lies laced with fear, anger, and hate spreads faster than facts.
The reason why 72% of the world today is now under authoritarian rule is partly because our public information ecosystem is corrupted. Good morning.
So what does this mean for Australia? And how do we deal with the growing influence of the tech giants over our lives?
I think it can be a really hopeful space with connection and community, and I've built a career out of it. But for me personally, I will look in the mirror and say, is this doing more harm than good?
Social media companies, they don't necessarily have a business interest in dealing with the problem.
Be careful of how you're being manipulated.
The Philippines is home to the largest Catholic community in Asia and is a population obsessed with social media. More than 97 million, that's 80%, are online. We've arrived in the thick of their midterm elections.
Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Ressa, and you're watching Rappler's continuing coverage of the 2025 national and local elections.
For decades, the Marcos and Duterte families have dominated politics.
Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Sara Duterte began as the Dream Team, a surprising union of the nation's most powerful political dynasties.
But that short-lived alliance has now broken down, and the two are locked in a bitter feud. Sara Duterte is the daughter of former President Rodrigo Duterte. He was arrested earlier this year by the International Criminal Court for his deadly war on drugs. Now, he's behind bars in The Hague. Despite that, in his home city of Davao, he's running for mayor. In metropolitan Manila, the Rappler newsroom is buzzing. This is the headquarters for Maria Ressa and her team of journalists.
Earlier, you talked about doubting whether voters have agency. What do you mean by that?
Part of the information environment is polluted, and perhaps polluted in ways that we are not yet able to monitor or understand.
Some voters are worried that disinformation spreading on social media will impact election results.
Some of us may misunderstand how much agency we may have entering the voting booth. I would think, I've made up my mind, but maybe part of our mind has been made up by disinformation.
When we started Rappler, we thought that social media could be a democratizing influence. It worked for a little while.
Born in Manila and raised in the US, Maria Ressa has worked across the globe as a journalist for almost 40 years.
I opened CNN's Manila Bureau, CNN's Jakarta Bureau. By 2011, 2012, I had run the largest news network in the Philippines for 6 years.
In 2012, she was inspired by the possibilities of social media. With friends, she founded Rappler, the first digital news site in the Philippines.
I would say my co-founders and I drank the Kool-Aid of social media. Our goals were simple, that instead of coming down as journalists, top down, we could get citizens to come bottom up. The elevator pitch is that we build communities of action, and the food we feed our communities is journalism.
Raise your hand if you have
What we did was to remind this young population that they have power and to use social media, that they could actually use this to effect change.
Rappler hired a team of 20-somethings, some of them straight from Twitter. They covered corruption, climate change, and natural disasters.
Then technology accelerated. Algorithms began to shift and personalize realities, and that's when we ran into trouble. By 2016, the election of Rodrigo Duterte was the first Facebook election of a president.
There's a 3 million drug addicts. I'd be happy to slaughter them.
When Rodrigo Duterte became the country's leader, he rolled out his war on drugs across the nation. Over 6,000 people died according to government sources, up to 30,000 according to human rights groups.
He told Filipinos, I will make the fish of Manila Bay fat, meaning he would throw bodies into Manila Bay. You take the man at his word. He actually delivered every promise he made.
Maria and her team were critical of the extrajudicial killings. They also discovered a network of trolls, fake bots and online influencers enlisted to support Duterte's violence. When they published these findings, they themselves became a target.
So the first attack on us in 2016 were online, exponential information warfare. There were concerted campaigns, information operations, #unfollow Rappler. Because that's when we thought, oh, really, it must be people, right? Like, they're just angry. By August, we realized that this was something we had never dealt with before.
We've seen a lot of accounts that were made to look like real people.
Pauline Macarege works as a journalist with Maria at Rappler.
When we investigated further, we saw that they were actually sock puppets. They could use stock photos. Right now, some of them use AI-generated photos, generic names, generic cover photos. They don't have a lot of posts.
And by October, I was getting an average of 90 hate messages per hour. 60% were meant to tear down my credibility, 40% to tear down my spirit.
In 2017, a hashtag Arrest Maria Ressa campaign was launched. 2 years later, she was arrested. At one point, she faced a combined prison sentence of more than 100 years.
The fact that the government continues to try to label us as criminals is itself criminal.
Most of those charges against Maria have since been dismissed. But to this day, she remains a vocal critic of the role big tech played in the attacks on her and the continued undermining of democracy.
What was envisioned by these tech companies as an advertising and marketing tool was being exploited for geopolitical power. And all of us on these platforms were being insidiously manipulated.
On the internet, data about each of us is collected so ads and content served to us reflect our interests. But there is a danger that comes with these algorithms.
Personalization, sure, you get the sneakers that you want, but you also get the reality that you want. If there are 20 of us in this room, all 20 of us will have our own reality. In the old world, that's called an insane asylum. You cannot have 20 realities, right? This is part of what a democracy does. It puts us in the same shared reality where we're forced to listen and learn from each other. Democracy is not about screaming at each other or figuring out the best angle so people will watch you.
Today I am interviewing the Prime Minister.
In Australia, Hannah Ferguson is a progressive 27-year-old commentator prolific on social media.
This is an exciting day. This is not a day to be panicked.
She makes news and politics accessible to young Australians through her company Cheek Media.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. How do you speak to young people who are disappointed?
When I was 22 and Cheek was founded, it was really on the basis that youth media didn't actually take the views of young people seriously. So much of them focus on pop culture and satire, and that's fantastic. But for me, I wanted to create an outlet and find a space where people could connect with the idea that you can mesh the deeply serious and the deeply fun. It was a space where I didn't need to depend on financial backing. I didn't need a masthead behind me to create trust, to grow an audience. It was a fresh space for fresh opinions. That's been an incredible tool for change and starting positive social impact conversations around politics, education, media literacy. Like, there's so many powerful elements to social media.
But despite her success with social media, Hannah has become wary of the platforms.
Being exposed as a young woman on social media and trying to lead hopeful change and interesting conversation comes with threats to my life, threats to my safety, threats to my family.
She's also wary about how polarising the online world has become.
The algorithms push for inflammatory material, and we are so used to that. Our attention spans are so shortened now that we are really, many of us are only ever able to engage with those high-level, quick-hitting, that sort of dopamine rush of a one sentence that says something extreme. That reaction that it builds in us, we're dependent on it now.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
The way that information is spreading right now is so volatile and so inflammatory and divided that we do not have a sense of a shared truth.
It's not about making you believe one thing, it's about making you distrust everything, right? Because without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without these three, you don't have a shared reality. You can't agree, you can't solve any problem, let alone things like climate change, the existential ones.
Globally, disinformation campaigns have amplified extreme voices and deepened divisions in societies.
It's clear now that we didn't do enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well.
Guardian journalist Carol Cadwallader believes disinformation on Facebook helped win the Brexit referendum.
This tech is global. What it proved is that we could all be manipulated in the exact same way, regardless of country or culture.
The attack on the Southport Mosque was the culmination of a concerted disinformation campaign.
It looks like we were in a war zone because of a lie.
In the US, plans to attack Capitol Hill were organised publicly on mainstream social media.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Police outnumbered and overpowered. The fury turned deadly.
In every country around the world, radicalization leads to real-world violence. Online violence is real-world violence.
I think that this threat to democracy is very real. And when we say threat to democracy, I think that the threat isn't some faraway thing in the future.
Hannah Ferguson believes we need to be on our guard, even here in Australia.
Our system of compulsory preferential voting is inherently different to the United States, but to say it couldn't happen here is naive, and we need to be aware and we need to be constantly questioning what we're consuming and how that could look in Australia.
Back in the Philippines, journalists are working hard to cover the elections. Pauline is scouring the platforms for disinformation trends.
We monitor the online conversation so we can quickly, debunk the false claims that we see online. Right now, it's harder to spot fake news, false information online. It's become more sophisticated.
She and the team have exposed a fake post claiming US President Donald Trump is calling for Duterte's release.
This time we saw a fake quote card attributing a statement from supposedly Trump, President Donald Trump, saying that he supports Duterte and that Duterte shouldn't be held in the ICC, which we know and which we have debunked to be false, yeah.
But even Pauline admits to the irresistible lure of social media.
You can't deny that social media really is entertaining. I'm just like everybody else. When I'm off the clock, I just go doom scroll on my social media and I use it to connect with my friends, my family. I also use it to get information, but that comes with a caveat that I always check the source. Even I, myself, really become a victim sometimes of false information because it could really look legitimate right now.
Hey everyone. I want to talk about something important today because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram.
After the election of Donald Trump, Mark Zuckerberg cancels fact-checking completely in the United States.
This surprise announcement from Meta boss Mark Zuckerberg set off alarm bells around the world.
The fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. We're going to get rid of fact-checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US.
I was really surprised. I thought that it's like removing a line of defense for the public.
In Sydney, the ABC's fact-checking team is led by Matt Martino. He saw the decision as a calculated move.
It looks to me like Facebook is sniffing the breeze and making a corporate decision. Now, you've got community notes, which can sometimes be useful at crowdsourcing that information. People genuinely do want to be helpful. But a lot of those community notes actually do rely on existing fact checks and media. And if they're not willing to fund fact checking, what we're left with is kind of a circular information system where no one actually really knows what's going on.
We can talk at a high level about the way that this affects politics, power, democracy, but it's also the small things that start us down this it opened the floodgates to trusting things like TikTok videos, to Instagram swipe explainers.
The oatmeal. I know, we got to talk about it.
We are being trained by the algorithm to trust people on the internet that we're exposed to over and over again without ever actually questioning their qualification, their expertise, and why they might be saying something.
Which world can we live in without facts? Because in the end, a world with no facts is ripe for a dictator.
Many of us use AI chatbots known as large language models to help us find information online. But their answers depend on the quality of the data programmed in.
We saw the report from ABC Australia talking about how generative AI, large language models, are being manipulated. Can you explain that?
In Australia, the ABC's technology journalist Ange Lavoie-Pierre and the fact-checking team had their work cut out for them in the lead-up to the federal election.
We were interested in finding out the extent to which AI chatbots like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini, for example, whether they were repeating false narratives, particularly to do with Australian domestic politics.
They uncovered a Russian network ingesting false information into chatbots. They found that 1 in 6 responses were wrong.
So an example of the kind of disinformation or misinformation we were testing with the chatbots is the Australian government gives millions of dollars to Hamas, or, that there's an Australian Muslim party running in the election. Now, neither of those things are true, but chatbots got that wrong at times. There's a concerted effort going on to change the integrity of our information from a foreign power with really different interests to Australia's.
It's terrifying to realise that people believe that because AI is often using the information available to it to produce answers for us, that it's inherently correct.
Oh my gosh, we're making the same mistakes that we did with social media. How do you poison the large language models? How does propaganda get in? By poisoning the food.
I'm someone who, as AI is introduced into our everyday lives, doesn't know whether to rail against it or to adopt it as a way of the future. And we're at this kind of intersection, this crossroads. To deny the existence of AI is like denying the introduction of the computer. So a lot of us are thinking is there ethical objection, or do we need to adopt it in ways that feel safe and adaptable and normal for our everyday lives?
Across the globe, an alarming number of disinformation operations are active. On Meta alone, more than 3.8 million fake pages exist. And while social media companies are trying to address these inauthentic campaigns, experts argue that without stronger enforcement, they will continue to deceive.
If we agree that we do need to address this issue, I would go so far as to say that it needs to be governments that do it. Social media companies, it's all clicks, it's all traffic, which is not to say that they don't try to address this stuff genuinely and have policies and teams dedicated to that. There are humans within those businesses that do care about this stuff, but they're businesses at the end of the day.
Laws to address illegal content and disinformation have been adopted in the EU.
In France, in Germany, in Great Britain and right around the world, democratic countries are rightly concerned about the material that's been broadcast on social media networks.
Last year, the Australian government proposed a bill with similar aims, but faced criticism from all sides. The bill was ultimately rejected in Parliament.
Mis and disinformation is a problem, but unless you deal with it properly, rather than this kind of half-baked option.
So this bill, the misinformation bill, would create unprecedented restrictions on free speech in Australia.
Elon Musk has labelled Australia fascists in response to the government's threats to fine internet platforms over the spread of misinformation online.
That's a tech lobby move because by preventing legislation, they can continue printing money. When you target someone with 90 hate messages per hour, the goal is not free speech, the goal is information warfare. And that is enabled by the design of the social media platforms.
We don't want to suppress opinion because opinion is a great part of democracy, but we also don't want to harm people.
It's election day and Maria hurries to cast her vote. In a country where politics and corruption have gone hand in hand, does she believe the country's future could change for the better?
I mean, I know too much to be completely hopeful, but the Philippines is in a good place, in quotes. There's something wrong when the world is upside down and the Philippines is more stable than the United States. And essentially, we put a president under arrest.
And what about social media and AI? How do we humans resist the grips of the tech giants? Maria believes we need to stand up to the tech bros and redesign the platforms.
Stop surveillance for profit. They've essentially taken machine learning to build a model of you that knows you better than you know yourself, right? Model sounds very distancing. I love how these words are coined by the tech companies. Use the word clone. Did you give your consent to be cloned for profit?
It's hard to imagine we can opt out completely. So much of our lives and connections depend on social media. So what are some solutions we can adopt ourselves?
You can now get apps that lock you out of your social media apps after a certain amount of time spent per day. So I know one of my friends only does 15 minutes per app. Now, that's unrealistic for people like me who have a phone addiction, let's just be honest about it. But I actually remove the apps on weekends a lot of the time just to make sure that I have a break and have time to myself without that sort of dopamine receptor all the time.
Social media algorithms, they function on anger and base emotions. I always say when you're doom scrolling online that your outrage should be your gauge. That should be a flag that perhaps someone is trying to misinform you or direct you in a certain way.
Hitting not interested when something harmful appears on your feed, blocking that account that has produced it, reporting that account. We know those sorts of things actually help develop our algorithm.
Checking who it is that's talking. Is this a genuine account? Is this a genuine person? Are they qualified to say what they're saying? Do they have an interest in convincing me of their view?
I would treat AI like you would treat an intern. Fact check it before you pass on the information.
Whenever I consume something online that I think is worth saying or sharing, I would go and read at least 3 sources I trust about it, at least 3. And I always have 5 to 15 people in my feed at any time, not a harmful or bigoted person, but creators who offer opinions to me that I would challenge.
If you're not on guard, there's a high chance that you will be targeted. So I think self-awareness is important, critical thinking is important.
Be careful of how you're being manipulated. Form communities of action. This is an existential moment for news organizations globally.
Maria and Rappler's work have helped bring about change in the Philippines. Even though Rodrigo Duterte was elected mayor of his local city, he still remains behind bars in The Hague. Many hope to see justice at the International Criminal Court in September when he is brought to trial.
For me, the best part about the arrest of Rodrigo Duterte is that the biggest question the world faced in March of 2025 was whether or not an international rules-based order still exists. And what the Philippines proved, what that arrest proved, is that yes, it does. And at some point, impunity ends.
I think it's women like her that are changing the way we converse and understand power and control. Such a firebrand, such a superpower.
Holding power to account came at a personal cost for Maria. How does she do it?
It's not nice to have to deal with going to jail for over a century cumulatively, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Literally.
That's what makes me want to hold the line for journalists here in Rappler in the Philippines and for the public also, who, we journalists serve.
Our phrase in the Philippines is hold the line. These are the rights guaranteed by the Constitution. And even if you take a bulldozer, we'll link hands and hold the line.